It's Rob!
Tony! And I'm Jeff.
We're in gaming.
And that's you.
Hello gamers and welcome back to the Inn. I'm Rob and today we've got something special. This video is off the wall, nothing like we've done before. We're going to go over the most popular decks in Hearthstone. Obviously I can't cover every deck in Hearthstone, but I can try to cover what I think is the most popular, most played decks, and the decks you're definitely going to see the most when playing against these specific classes. If I've done a deck guide on these decks, I'll throw that annotation to the right and you can check out how to play it if you're interested. If not, you can just go on with the video. Since we're already here, we're going to start off with the Warrior deck and the two kinds of Warrior decks you're going to see. First is going to be the Grim Patron Warrior deck. This has recently just sprung up with the release of Blackrock Mountain. I noticed I said release there too many times, but don't you worry about that. So the Grim Patron really changed the whole dynamic of a Warrior deck. It really just synchronized every card to it. I mean, if you just look at the guide or you have faced this deck, you'll see that every card in the deck really just goes well together. There's just so much mesh and there's so many combos you can do with it. It's ridiculous. So I'm sure once you play this deck, you'll kind of realize how good it is and you'll probably give it a try. Heading over to our second Warrior deck, we've got more of a control-y kind of deck. This is my honestly personal favorite kind of Warrior deck to play. I don't like the Grim Patron just because of how cheap it is to play. This deck kind of relies on mid to late game, but does have a decent early game. Overall, solid deck, a little more expensive to build, but hey, it's fun to play no matter what. Heading away from the Warrior and on to probably one of the most popular classes, if not the most popular class, we've got the Mage here, and this seems to be a very common deck that just spurted up after the release of Blackrock Mountain due to the Flame Waker, I'm sorry. And it's a very early, very mid-game intensive. It's a very hard deck to beat if it gets the right cards. And definitely a player who learns how to play this deck very effectively will do very well. The deck overall is very cheap, and again, very, very effective. So taking a look at the other mage deck that we're going to talk about, this is the Mech Mage. This is literally the bread and butter of every mage deck that's going on right now. There's just so many people playing it. The reason why so many people are playing it is because it's so cheap to play for how good it is. You don't really have to have the Dark Knight, you don't have to have Sylvanas, and you don't really have to have Dr. Boom to make it really effective. Those are just nice to have. So, I mean, if you want to play mage, don't have a lot of coin, or dust for that matter, this is a good deck to build, great place to start for any beginner. Heading away from the mage and onto my personal favorite, we've got the Ramp Druid. So far this deck has gotten me to rank, I believe, 4, if not 5. Very fun to play. It does take a little bit of thinking on this one to plan out a couple moves ahead so you can deal the Force of Nature Savage Roar combo so it actually makes sense. I mean, just playing the cards, I mean, you gotta think ahead a little bit on this deck, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about most popular decks, and this is definitely a deck you're going to be seeing, and it's definitely a deck to be ready for when you play it, because it is no joke if you're playing against someone who actually can get the combos down correctly. Heading away from my favorite deck and onto probably some of my least favorite decks, the Mulligan decks. These are pretty much draw till you die decks, so the point is to you stay alive, your opponent draws until they have no more cards left, they take damage, they die. It can't pretty much get any simpler than that. The deck does take a decent amount of skill though to think ahead and to have yourself live, because there's not a lot of taunts you hide behind. It's strictly killing your opponent's card, they draw cards, putting up some walls, killing off their creatures. So it definitely does take some skill to play, don't get me wrong, but it's just one of the most boring, unenjoyable decks you could possibly play with, in my opinion, and also go against. Moving away from the Druid and onto the Paladin, the very, very common deck you're going to see when going against Paladin is either going to be Dragon, which we just not going to talk about yet, it's too early, but we will talk about the Muster for Battle Quartermaster combo. This combo is absolutely fucking ridiculous if you can pull it out early. Even pulling it out late game is still really hard to beat unless you have some form of field clear. The whole deck is very, very strong and fast-paced and very building. Once they're able to build up their field and get that card advantage, it's really hard to stop this deck. But remember, if you do go against this deck, it has 0 burst. The only burst you're going to see coming out of this deck is from the creatures on the field. Besides that, there's really not any big spells besides Avenging Wrath. And this is definitely a fun deck to play. You knew we were going to hit this point eventually. Now we've gotten to the point where we're going to talk about some rush decks. Right here, we've got a rush Paladin deck. The only reason this deck will work so well is the fact that it has Divine Favor in it, and that's you pretty much blow all your cards, have no cards in your hand, pick up Divine Favor, Hopefully your opponent is good and they've got cards in their hand like a normal player should, and then you Divine Favor and draw as many cards as your opponent has in their hand. So this pretty much says, I can suck ass, I will play as many cards, even if they die, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to have as many cards as my opponent has in their hand, because my opponent's probably a good player. Sorry, Paladin Rush players, but I honestly dislike you with a pretty hardcore passion. But the deck is played, so it's very effective nonetheless, and it's pretty cheap to play, and like I've said, it's pretty effective, unfortunately. So, moving to a deck you're probably never going to see, the Priest deck. This is definitely a really fun deck to play, in my opinion. Really hard, but it's well worth it if you can get used to it. So, the Control Priest, if you play against a Priest, you're either going to play this kind of deck, or the next one we'll go over in a second, but in my experience, just be cautious when playing Control Priest. If you're playing a Rush deck, I feel sorry, because all your creatures are going to get taken. And if you're not playing a Rush deck, I'm sorry too, because all your creatures are going to get taken. Hence the word Control. So let's move on to the second form of Priest deck that you're probably going to see. So taking a look at the deck list, we do see some overlap with the Control deck, but there are some cards in here that really give it an early to mid-game advantage over the Control. The Control is very slow. So if we look, we see a Defender of Argus, we see a Injured Blade Master, we see a Velen's Chosen. All these give it a really strong mid-game, which gives you that advantage early on rather than later on with the Control. Again, Priest is a very different kind of class to play than, let's say, Hunter or Warrior, so it's just going to take some time, but it's definitely a class to give it a try, and if you enjoy it and you like it, keep going with it. Heading over to, again, one of my least favorite decks to play as and to go against, it's the Mulligan decks. This is a Mulligan Rogue. I think it's more effective and efficient than the Druid, but everybody's got their opinions. This is pretty much does the same thing as the Druid deck. You have to think ahead a couple turns. You've got to plan out how many cards your opponent's drawing and how to get them to draw as many cards as possible, along with continuous field removal so that you don't take any damage. Heading on over to the other type of Rogue deck you're going to see, I can't say a ton about it because honestly I don't really play Rogue, but I've definitely played against Rogue, and going against this deck is really annoying. They call it the Miracle Rogue. If you've got some weapon removals in your deck, you'll be doing alright, but if you don't, it's really hard to get past an Assassin's Blade with all the weapon buffs they have, along with the Fan of Knives, and more so the, where is it called? Blade Fury. There you go. That's the card I was looking for. Really hard to get past. And the preparation with the sprint, draw 4 cards. I mean, it's just, this deck has a lot of great cards in it, and if somebody uses it effectively against you, it's going to be real hard to beat. Heading on over to a deck that, again, no one really plays. It's the Shaman deck. If someone plays you with a Shaman deck, they probably know what they're doing because no one just plays Shaman just for the shits and giggles of it. With the Blackrock Mountain expansion came the Flame Guard Destroyer cards. Really, really good. Really put them back on the map, kinda. So if you play a Shaman, you're probably going to be going against either this rendition of the deck or the following deck, which is a why not just play Mech Mage deck. So heading over to the second rendition of this deck, it's not really a Mech Mage, but it is a Mech, but it's not really Mage. It's more like a Shaman, but it's like, it has Mage tendencies. So if you see the deck, it pretty much almost has exactly the same setup as the Mech Mage. Plays very similar. The only difference is the passive, the Bloodlust, and the Bob Lobber, my bad. Again, I don't know why you just wouldn't play Mech Mage, but hey, there's some people that like Mech Shaman just because, I don't know, they could be Shaman lovers. Moving on to a class you're going to see over and over and over and over and over and over again. We've got the Face Hunter. This is not the exact format of deck. None of these decks are the exact format people are going to be playing. There's always going to be renditions to these decks, a little bit of tweaking here, but the premise, the theme, the overall goal these decks are going for are pretty much going to be the same. So with the Face deck, it's pretty much just a Rush Hunter. If you can't hold out the early turns, it's going to be hard to come back late game just for the pure fact that there's so much rush in this deck. Every card is meant to destroy you piece by piece by piece. Very, very, very cheap deck to build, very effective, and pretty fun if you play it correctly and you keep winning, because winning's fun, right? So getting away from the Face Hunter, moving to something a little bit more mid to late game. I wouldn't really even call it late game. I'd say early. Very strong mid-game. We've got the Wild and Out Hunter deck. Some call it the Beast Hunter deck. The Houndmaster's in here. The Tundra Rhino's in here. The Savannah Highmane, a really great 6-drop for the Hunters in here. This deck is definitely not something to be reckoned with. It definitely can do huge damage in one turn. It's not as rushy, like I've said, but it does have rush tendencies. We are at our last class now, so let's make it short, quick, and to the point. We made it to the Warlock, guys. This is, again, one of the decks. If not Hunter, you're going to be going against Warlock, and of course the Rush Warlock. This is just my rendition of the new Rush Warlock deck I built. It got me to rank, I think, 6 with no problem at all. It's very, very fast-paced, but it also has a late game, so it doesn't burn itself out. So if you see Rush Warlock, just this setup is probably going to be relatively the same. There'll be a couple cards changed out here and there, but for the most part, this is the type of deck you're going to be seeing. Very effective, and it can definitely do a ton of damage in one turn, just like the Hunter. Moving to the other kind of Warlock deck you're going to see, this right here, this deck has been around since literally the game came out. There hasn't been a lot of change to this deck that shows how permanent, how stable, and how good this deck is. If you've got some dust and gold to drop, this is definitely a deck you should check out and try. It'll do very well. If you check out pro streamers, they're playing this deck. They might not play the exact cards, but it's renditions of this deck, the Molten Mountain Giant deck with the Lord Jaraxxus. The base of this deck is to pretty much summon huge creatures from turn 4 on with the Twilight Drake, the Mountain Giant if you got a lot of cards in your hand, the Molten Giant when you don't have a lot of health, and then the super late game Lord Jaraxxus. So, I mean, this deck, it'll take you to the high places. It'll also fuck you over sometimes, but for the most part, it'll be a great deck for anyone to try out and very effective. So thanks for checking out the video. Let me know through the comment section below. Just keep in mind, though, that these decks are not the only kind of decks you're going to see. I'm sure there's people playing tons of other ones. These are just some of the main decks that really stick out and decks you're most likely going to be going against. Again, not all these cards will be exactly to the T. There's going to be renditions of these decks, so just keep that in mind. Don't nail me down saying, oh, this is a little bit different. I know they're a little bit different. I'm just trying to help out some of the newer players and let you guys know, hey, these are the kind of decks you're going to be going against. If you're looking to build some of the more popular decks, these are some good places to start. So again, this is more of just a guiding tool and to help those newer players out. I'm by no reason saying these are the only decks, again, and that I'm a pro at these decks, or they're even built right on my screen. These are just the way I like to build them. So with all of that said, again, thank you guys for stopping by the end. Hopefully you've enjoyed another Hearthstone video with your boy Warshak. So again, thanks for stopping by the end, and happy whatever the hell day it is. Today we're going to try to answer a very common question in Hearthstone. What pack should I buy?